welcome to Bleav in Clemson Football. I'm Will Vandervoort. That's Alex Dodd, our extraordinary producer. Welcome back for another week of Bleav in Clemson Football as we get you set for Clemson, Florida State this week. Tigers riding high now, 3 straight wins, 3-1 overall, 2-0 in the Atlantic Coast Conference. By the way, nobody talks about this, but not only is Clemson 2-0 in the Atlantic Coast Conference, Clemson is in first place in the Atlantic Coast Conference as the only 2-0 team. So, just let you guys out there know that because nobody else in the stratosphere is going to say that. Alex, how are you doing, buddy?
I'm doing great. I'm a little under the weather. I was at a rodeo this past week in Sioux Falls, South Dakota. Got a lot of dust in my sinuses, but I'm doing all right.
It's good. I'm glad to hear you, man. Glad to see you. I know rodeo coverage is different than what you were trained to do, and all that. Kind of give a little bit of an idea out there why you do rodeo coverage, what's so they can understand what you do.
Well, I'd never really been to a rodeo before I moved to South Dakota. But when you go to a place like South Dakota where it's such a big deal, it's part of the job. So I was going out covering a bunch of rodeos, kind of fell in love with the sport. The athletes are great people. The stock contractors are great people. Everybody around us a great person. Easy to fit in as a Southern boy in the Western lifestyle. So job came open with Pro Rodeo in Colorado Springs, and took up the job down here. It's given me a lot of opportunities too to do stuff like this. I actually have time in my weekly schedule to be able to talk about Clemson football with Will and get some good guests on this show.
That's right. Alex, of course, worked with me at the Clemson Insider for 5 years, 4.5 years, Alex, right? And
was 4.5, not really by my own choice.
Yeah.
took me a little while to get one of these, but
technically it was by your own choice. But you worked with us for 4.5 years as a student worker and did a great job with us. And so it only made sense Alex joined us on the podcast and help out as a guy who understands Clemson football as well as anybody. Speaking of a guy who understands Clemson football as well as anybody, will be former Clemson tight end Jordan Leggett. He will be joining us tonight to talk about the Clemson-Florida State rivalry, talk about the 2016 game. I don't think there's a better guest to talk about Florida State, considering he's right down the road from Tallahassee where he grew up. He was recruited by Florida State, all those things. And, of course, he's one of the heroes of this rivalry for Clemson. Alex, you did a good job getting him on. I appreciate you doing that.
Oh no, I'm excited to hear from Jordan too. And you think about when he played at Clemson too, at 13-16 was really the power shift in the ACC where Clemson, regained control of the conference and became the premier football school again, and really started dominating the rivalry from the point that his junior year when they won that game in Clemson, and then senior year when they went down to Tallahassee and won that game, which Jordan played a big role in.
Right, and so we're really excited to hear from Jordan Leggett and get his thoughts on this year's game as he'll break down a little bit as well, and get his thoughts on the current Clemson team and what he sees going forward. So we'll have him on here in about maybe 10 minutes or so. So we look forward to having that. So stick with us. If you guys have any questions or comments for Jordan Leggett, please throw it in the comment section. We'll definitely throw those up and have him answer those for you. So please participate in the podcast. We'd love it when you guys do that. So please continue to do so. In the meantime, just want to let you guys know that we'll talk about who sponsors us each and every week. That'll be the Clemson Insider for the most complete coverage of Clemson athletics and recruiting. Go to ClemsonInsider.com. You can get all the latest news and information on the Tigers there. Appreciate Robert always allowing us to use his platform each and every week on Facebook at Clemson Insider, and as well as on YouTube and at Twitter, or X, I should say. And so we come to you in all those different avenues. You can also find us on, of course, Bleav, the Bleav podcast network. That you can get us on, what we're doing now, obviously, and then obviously, as well as when the podcast goes to the audio version first thing tomorrow morning. So check that out. Be looking for that. If you're already a subscriber, thank you. We ask that you please subscribe to the podcast and give us a big one of these, if you will. Let me put my camera. There we go. Give us one of these.
One of these. If you're on Spotify or Apple Podcasts, make sure you go rate the show too.
Yeah, absolutely.
Because if you like what we like and you like hearing what we have to talk about, then so will other Clemson fans. So make sure to go give us a review.
Exactly. And do that on YouTube as well. It's big time. It helps a lot. And so we do appreciate it. We appreciate all you guys out there watching it and listening. But now we're going to kind of get into review a little bit before Jordan gets on here. Let's go ahead, Alex, and review about Clemson beat Stanford 40-14 last Saturday. They improved to 3-1 overall, 2-0 in the ACC. Alex, I know you had to go back and watch the game after you got done working. I
got
there.
to watch pretty much the whole thing.
Yeah, this is Alex is dodging cows and bulls and horses and watching the Clemson football game in the middle of the ring, by the way. And
not quite, but I was watching the game in the media room.
Yeah, people are like, "What are you cheering for? What are you doing?" Of course, I was in Death Valley watching the game in person. And Alex, I tell you what, I will start off here because I think a lot of people are concerned about Clemson's defense. They did give up over 260 rushing yards against Stanford, and they struggled early in the game, especially in that first half, stopping the quarterback run and the RPO game of Stanford, which we said on this show, if you listened last week, that was what Stanford was going to do. They were going to attack the side that Peter Woods would normally play. Clemson started off with Cade Dienhoff over there. They brought in Hoffler as well. But that wasn't working. So they moved Parker over there. And then eventually when they got Parker settled in, that kind of stuff stopped. And then I think Jaheim Lawson played well on the other side for Parker. So, I think they adjusted. And then I think up until that last drive, Stanford had 65 total yards in the second half up until that last drive when it got what we call just garbage time. They got a garbage time touchdown. And so I really don't count it. Unfortunately, as Dabo says, it goes against the stats. But again, I'm not concerned because I saw Clemson adjust and I saw them make plays and dominate the second half defensively.
Yeah, I'm with you too. And I also think, Clemson fans, you should be, it should be reassuring to see how opportunistic the defense was in the game. I mean, those turnovers, they don't just happen, willy-nilly. That requires being in the right spot, making plays. So I think that them being opportunistic should be something that should be reassuring to Clemson fans. Also, hey, a week ago, you guys were talking about how the backups weren't playing as well. And the backups really stepped up in the second half when they had their opportunities and made the most of them. You mentioned Hoffler, you mentioned Jaheim Lawson. I thought guys in the secondary played well too. Man, a guy that really impressed me in the game was Avion Terrell. He was going up against one of the better receivers in the country in Eric Iomanner and shut him down. I mean,
he wasn't even a factor in the game.
That's a guy that, he went off on another guy that people think is a Heisman contender last year in Travis Hunter. He went off on him in the second half. And Avion Terrell stepped up and matched him stride for stride and won that battle.
No, absolutely he did. And no surprise because that's who Avion is Hunter, I look at him, he's more of and I hate to say it this way, but he likes to play offense. He likes to play wide receiver and he likes to, he's like Dion. He's a finesse guy. He's speed and finesse and flashiness, and he's
a hell of a ball player.
That's what I was about to say. He's a hell of a ball player. So don't get me wrong. Deion Sanders was a hell of a ball player, but Deion Sanders was not going to get in there and tackle you. Everybody knew that. And Hunter's the same kind of way. Where Avion's physical, man. He gets up in there and he's going to lay the wood down. He's going to go in there, even though he's 5'10", if that, and he weighs 180 pounds, if that. He will come after you, right? And he gets his head in there, makes tackles, and that's why. And I think that kind of surprised Stanford a little bit last week how physical he is, and I think he surprises a lot of guys with that when he plays them. And I think they have to adjust. Like, oh man, I'm gonna have to come to work today because this guy really brings it. When I think on film, they're not really seeing how physical he can be, and I don't know why because it shows on film when I watch it. But it seems like every guy he goes up against is. Remember who he shut down? Downs. Was it Downs last year or whoever North Carolina? Yeah, he shut him down last year. And the same thing with Georgia Tech's top receiver last year and Singleton. It was Singleton. Shut him down as well. I'm just, that's what he does.
Well, I think he's got the same thing that his brother had. It's just this gene in him that, I'm sure he heard people talking. I'm sure Dabo and them were over there. Mike Reed was over there. Hey, I'm hearing you're not going to be able to stop Iomanner this week. I hear you're going against this guy that blew up Travis Hunter last year. I'm sure he heard that throughout the week, but he's got that same gene that AJ had, and that's AJ still has in the NFL, where, it doesn't matter who lines up against him. Honestly, the better the guy that's lining up against him is, the better he's going to play.
Yeah.
Kind of has that big game, big matchup gene, and it really showed, I thought, on Saturday.
And he seeks contact. If you go watch the Falcons play, AJ Terrell is like almost in every tackle, even though he shouldn't be. I
Yeah.
mean, I remember the Steelers were there a couple weeks ago, and it's like every time I looked up, it's like tackle by AJ Terrell, and that's like it's like when he shouldn't even be doing it. And I think Avion's the same way as his brother, as you mentioned. He likes to get his nose in there, and he's not afraid to tackle. His brother was the same way at Clemson as well, and so I think that catches people by surprise. Now, obviously, AJ's a little bit taller, than his brother is, than Avion is, but I like the nastiness that he brings, and I think he's one of the top corners in the country, and I don't think he gets the credit he deserves because, man,
I
he
think
does as
he's
good a
going to
job as
start
anybody.
getting it. I think he's going to start getting the credit. I mean, when you go up against guys like that, when you're going up against the big dogs and guys are going to be draft picks, and you're able to shut them down like he was able to shut them down, people notice.
And
So I think people are going to start noticing now.
And who did he shut down the week before?
Yeah,
Concepcion. He shut him down.
Yep.
So
Concepcion.
That's right. So and I thought overall he did well against Georgia too in their receivers when he was in there. A little bit more. I thought the Clemson offense looked a little shaky at times, but when they needed to, they made some plays. The only thing that concerns me is you got a case of the drops. When you look at the Cade Klubnik's numbers, he did. By the way, he had 5 touchdowns. And though his numbers were 15 of 31, that most of those were not on him. I think he had 1 or 2 throwaways, and then he had TJ Moore drop a couple passes.
Had some
drop a
couple
passes.
that should have been PIs in the game too.
Couple that should have been PIs, so you take those off the board. So I think he should have been, when it's all said and done, should have been like 21 of 29 for probably over 300 yards. And maybe even one more touchdown, and would have had 6 total touchdowns. Could have been 7, So, first of all, ACC officials are horrible. I don't know how they didn't call pass interference on those, But we can say that every week about ACC officials, right?
Yeah. Well, I want to mention this too about Cade Klubnik. I saw this from Pete Nakos on 3 today. Cade Klubnik's the only Power 4 quarterback this season to have done each of these 3 things: thrown for 12 plus touchdowns, have a 60% or higher completion percentage, and average a target depth of 11 plus yards. Now, if you would have told me that last year or even coming out of the spring that Cade Klubnik would be doing that this fall, I think I probably would have told you were crazy, especially those deep shot numbers. But, man, I felt like the Clemson offense on Saturday, to me, it looked like a team that didn't have his or a pitcher that didn't have his fastball, but still had to figure out a way to get a guys put away. And they did it. I mean, they didn't have their fastball. They weren't able to find the kind of rhythm they maybe wanted to in the game, but they still hit the big shots, still had the big plays, and they still did enough of the little things to win the game on the scoreboard.
Absolutely. By the way, Jordan Leggett, former Clemson tight end, All-American, Mr. Everything at Clemson during his time. He will be joining us here in just a few minutes, so hang on and get ready to listen to his interview. We're excited about having him. We'll have him here for about 30 minutes or so, talking about his things, what he's doing now, about his time at Clemson, obviously the Clemson-Florida State game, the big plays he made in the game, and everything else. And then maybe get a little shot, give him a little time to talk about the Tigers too and what he thinks about this year's team as well. So stay tuned for that. One more thing I want to talk about. I thought the Clemson running game did really well, Alex, the other day. Especially as the game kept going. They end up with 150 yards, and I told everybody, I said, listen, they're going to have 150 yards rushing. They're getting the big plays. That's going to open up the running game, and Phil Maffa may not have the numbers, but, Cade had 50 yards rushing. You had, Maffa with about 60 yards rushing. As a team, they averaged over 6 yards per carry. By the way, they're second in the ACC in yards per carry.
And Phil Maffa had 5.8 yards per carry in the game, so he might not have had the big breakout runs that people wanted to see. He did have that 26-yarder, but he still was consistent on the ground, consistent in the run game.
Average 6 yards a carry. That's what you want. I thought, again, the offensive line did well overall. And you know who did really well, I thought, in that game was tight end Olsen Pat Henry. And no coincidence that we're going to go ahead and talk about another tight end for a little bit. And then we'll get his thoughts on Olsen Pat Henry as well. But as we get ready to bring on former Clemson tight end Jordan Leggett, as he's joining us on the show here today. And Jordan, welcome, man. It's good to see you again, buddy. Former Clemson All-American. Man, owns about every tight end record there is. I know this guy named Jake Briningstool is trying to break some of yours, man. Are you going to get with him to say, hey, dude, you got to kind of stop a little bit? I kind of like having those records.
It's kind of funny, actually. I was actually at Clemson, was it Tuesday of last week? And I had a lot of time on my hands, so I went and stopped by, and I got to see Coach Sweeney sitting on a team meeting, go meet all the tight ends, because now that I'm a fan, I'm kind of like everybody else. So I just see a jersey and a helmet, and it was kind of cool to meet the guys and meet all the tight ends.
Well, hey, we appreciate you, first of all, being here and joining us. I know you got a busy schedule and all and everything. And this is a big game for you, obviously, because you have some personal connections to this game as well. But I want to get your thoughts right off the bat. You talked about the tight ends and getting to meet them. Give me your thoughts on those guys and what you think of that unit overall.
I think it's definitely a very athletic group. I mean, all those guys there, they could be starters at any other college. So there's a lot of guys. I love how much depth we have, and the fact that they wanted to ask so many questions. They had so many questions for me about what would I do if I can go back to college? Just all these different questions. And I love the fact that they were just so invested and they wanted to pick my brain about everything. But it's a very athletic group. I think they complement each other well. I know we see a lot of Jake Briningstool, but like you said, he's almost touching some of my records. And I mean, he's a dog. He's a great kid to have out there. He catches the ball very well. So he's fun to watch.
Jordan, what's it like to be able to be a part of the program and, like you mentioned, kind of be a fan, but, that Coach Sweeney allows you guys to come back and be part of the program and still be involved in that way?
It's special, especially now with college football. I think it's changed so much from NIL to the transfer portal. And, I mean, just as a fan looking at it now and being a player back in the day, I mean, that's a lot to balance, especially as a player. So with Sweeney and how he's handling everything, as long as he's there, I'm definitely going to continue to go back. I mean, he's a special guy. I got a son now who's about to be 4 years old. And, if I allowed him to play football, Coach Sweeney would be the guy I would want him to play for. He's a special guy, and there's not too many of him out there anymore.
Former Clemson tight end Jordan Leggett joining us. If you have any questions for Jordan, want to ask him his professional opinion on the tight end position or the Tigers and what he thinks, please throw it in the comment section. We'll love to throw those up to him and ask him. I want to ask you, Jordan, because this is a big game. You're from the state of Florida. You're not too far from Tallahassee. Tell me, first of all, what it was like for you growing up in Florida. Were you a Florida State fan, first of all? And then how did you end up getting to Clemson? How did Florida State not grab you?
I think I could honestly care less about football, especially college sports or NFL growing up. I was too busy playing outside and doing other things. Me and my older brother started playing in about middle school. My dad was a big Steelers fan, so back then it was like the steel curtain. So I was a linebacker when I started. And then my brother switched over to offense, and I kind of switched over to offense. And once I got to high school, again, sports were just something fun for me to play. I played basketball as well. And once I got to the point where, you can't really teach size. So once I got to 6'5", which I was 6'5" in high school as well, I was able to be good at sports. And, football kind of took off for me. I got my first offer, I want to say, at the end of my sophomore year, and it was Clemson. They were my very first offer. And like I said, never really grew up a Tallahassee fan or FSU fan, but they are about 2 hours away from me right down the road. So they never really recruited me, never really talked to me. I went to a couple of their camps, and then after Clemson offered me, then they wanted to come the following week and offer me. So I kind of took that as kind of a slap in the face just because I was right here in your backyard the whole time. And the reason I ended up at Clemson, I didn't have a bunch of offers. Mizzou was my only SEC offer. Other than that, it was like UCF, USF, a bunch of teams down south. Louisville is another one from the ACC. And I don't know, it was just something special about it. A lot of people wanted me as either a receiver or tight end. Coach Morris at the time came down and kind of told me all about the position, told me about Dwayne Allen, who was playing that role at the time. And I absolutely loved it because every combine or event that I went to in high school, I typically would always go with the tight ends because it's always just route running. And I wasn't as fast as the receivers, but I knew I was faster than linebackers. So I really did pretty well at all these little scouting things I went to. And the reason I chose Clemson was just I wanted to go to a school that was going to compete on the highest level, which I got to do that quite a bit while I was at Clemson. And The other thing, I didn't want to sit for 3 or 4 years behind somebody, which I figured I would have done in the SEC if I decided to go that route. And I also just wanted to get far away from home. Not in a bad way. I just Bleav if you go to the school that's kind of right by your hometown, like if I would have went to FSU, then I've been back and forth to home, and I just think that's kind of trouble. So I kind of wanted to get far enough away from home, kind of build my own identity, make new friends, kind of just go out and go off on myself.
Joined by Jordan Leggett, former Clemson tight end, 2016 national champion. Jordan, you mentioned the kind of feel like it was a slap on the face. They came in with the late offer there from Florida State. Did you kind of carry that personal mentality over to the matchup with the Seminoles in college? Obviously, there's enough personal stuff with the teams going on during your tenure at Clemson.
Yeah,
already.
I don't really hold too many grudges. But obviously FSU, both my junior and senior year were, I think, both of my best games ever at Clemson as far as stats wise goes. So it's kind of ironic. And then to come full circle, I actually got awarded, I forget what the award was called. I got it somewhere in here, but pretty much the Panhandle where I grew up at, they always did an award banquet. And they did it for high school players, collegiate athletes, and then professional athletes. So I got to win the collegiate as well as NFL. And when I won the collegiate one, it was kind of funny because Jimbo Fisher was actually the guest speaker, and he had to give me my award. Which it's kind of funny just how full circle it comes.
What did Coach Fisher say? That's what I
want
to
the same thing. Just like he was right here in our backyard, and he ended up going to one of our biggest rivals. But Jimbo Fisher's a great guy as well. I got to speak with him for a little bit. So
yeah, that had to be funny. I wish I was there for that one. That would have been pretty good to watch. I want to ask you, because I mean, Jimbo Fisher, you were a thorn in his side, man, especially in that 15 and 16 games. And I would imagine it just seemed like, I know you really weren't probably thinking about it at the time, but it seemed like in that 16 game, you were thinking like, I mean, it's like maybe subconsciously like, man, I got to beat these guys, and I hope I'm the guy that's going to make the play. When you got that opportunity, talk about that winning touchdown and how you got yourself in the end zone, because that's one of the people who are coming on this podcast have seen. That's the picture I threw up with you diving over the pylon to get that ball in the end zone. I don't know how you stood up on that, to be honest with you. Can you talk me through that play?
Yeah, it was definitely a very special moment. Like I said, there was no hostility towards me and FSU. Like I said, I was just fortunate enough that those were my best games. And since it was so close to home, I always had a lot of family go to it. But yeah, I was lucky. I mean, that whole senior season, all the plays that I was able to make, a couple of game winners that I had. I mean, I came back my senior year just for the ultimate goal of making it back to the Natty. I knew my junior year, whenever we lost the Natty, I knew Deshaun was coming back. I knew Jay Guillermo, one of our linemen, was coming. Mike Williams was coming back. So there's so many pieces. So I figured we would have another shot at it. So pretty much that's how I played the whole season. I was like, I just got to give it my all because this is my last shot at this. And the FSU one, I mean, it worked out perfectly. I forget what I had on that last drive. I think it was 3 catches, 60-something yards, maybe more. And it was just special. I mean, because I think there's another picture of me, Cole Stout was my quarterback, kind of same play, diving for the end zone, just didn't make it, I think, either freshman or sophomore year. And to be able to, I just wasn't going to be denied on that play. So it was definitely sweet, a cool moment. Danny Pearman, my tight end coach, has it. I was at his office the other day, has the big picture blown up in his office. So no, it was definitely a very special moment. I got it somewhere in my house as well.
How often do you look at that and say, that's pretty sweet?
It's so funny because now I look at college sports. I watch it a lot now, especially Clemson, and just being a fan. And I get emotional even though I'm just a fan now. But it's funny. I watch them. I'm like, dang, they're athletic. Those guys are athletic. I couldn't imagine doing that anymore. But it's just funny because I made it to the top 1% of football players. And just watching it now, it's funny to see because I can never do that again.
Love it. I love the honesty, buddy. Go ahead, Alex.
It's the truth. I love being a fan, though. I do.
Jordan, we talked a good bit about that 2016 game. I want to kind of ask you about 2015. It's kind of a critical game for you guys, and kind of retaking the ACC and being the team to come out of the conference, because obviously freshman and sophomore year, Florida State was kind of running things. How important was that game junior year in Death Valley to kind of take that back for Clemson?
Yeah, like you mentioned, that was my first chance to go win an ACC championship. Like you said, FSU before that was Jameis Winston, Deontay Foreman, Kelvin Benjamin. So I'm pretty sure I remember getting blown out by them. I want to say freshman year. They came into Clemson and destroyed us. So we knew that FSU was kind of the standard at the time of the ACC. It kind of kept going back and forth, but for the past 2 years, they have won the ACC. So we knew we had to get through them to get it done. It was special just because FSU is such a great team, and I think it's going to forever just be Clemson FSU. And this year, obviously, it's not going to be the case. I think it's going to be us. I think Miami's going to put up a tough fight, but FSU is always fun to play. And playing down there in FSU Stadium was probably outside of the national championship is probably one of the most fun places to play.
You mentioned talking about that 15 game. You guys came down the hill. It was the first time ever that prior to that game that Clemson came down the hill ranked number 1 in Death Valley. What was that feeling like knowing you guys were the first one? Because, hey, we love we love Jeff Davis and the judge and everything he's done for Clemson and all. But that 81 team never came down the hill ranked number 1. So what was it like for you guys to come down the hill ranked number 1?
I think it was definitely cool, but at the same time, it was tough because everybody that we played, you're playing the number 1 team. We're probably on live on some network on some of the biggest stages. Everybody's going to give us their hardest game. And we kind of saw that all the junior year, all the senior year with our almost close losses. So it was tough. It was cool to see Clemson forever at number 1, but I would have been okay with number 2 or number 3 as well, just as long as we could make it to the playoffs. But everybody played us so hard. Even Dalvin Cook back in 2015 and 2016. Some of his best games were against us as well.
As Jordan Leggett joining us, former Clemson All-American, national champion tight end as well. Played in the NFL as well. Jordan, I want to ask you because you mentioned Dalvin Cook. Those matchups, man, and he was so good. He's still probably the best running back outside of Travis Etienne that I've ever watched in person. Just talk about how good he was. And, like, if you're sitting over there on the sideline watching him, you're thinking, guys just don't mess up. What are you thinking over there when you're watching that guy play?
Yeah, I'm trying to think back. I think 2015 in Clemson, I think he had like a long run in the first quarter. I think it was like 60 or 70-yard run just right out the middle. And, you kind of just sit there because we're just sitting on the sideline watching the defense play, and we're kind of like, it's gonna be a long game. We're gonna have to score some points. Like, they came to play, and like you said, he's a phenomenal athlete. There's 2 running backs that I really got to witness play. And I would say it's him and Todd Gurley. They were just so explosive, and they were game changers. It doesn't matter who they had around them or what it was or what the O-line looked like. They could really change the game, and you saw that with him. He put up points, and he had some of his best games against us.
Jordan, obviously you have a good perspective on what it's like to be in that rivalry as a player. What's it been like for you as a fan to watch the Clemson-Florida State rivalry and just to watch from a fan in general? It's got to feel kind of weird for you to not be in the huddle, not be wearing a helmet, but to be watching on TV or in the stands.
It's cool. I've never as far as hostility between rivalries and stuff, even with South Carolina, I feel like that rivalry only takes place if you're from South Carolina. But even for FSU, just watching them, I don't think this year is going to be anything too crazy. I was really hoping that DJ would play just for him to get to play against his old team. I thought it would have been super sweet. I know they're not having the season they wanted, but at the same time, they led the ACC for a very long time, and they're going to play us, and I guarantee they're going to play us pretty damn hard. I don't know much about their players, anybody they got except for DJ, but I know DJ is not even playing because he's hurt. But this isn't a game that we can walk through. We got to – hopefully they can focus up. I'm glad that it's at home, correct? Or no, it's in Tallahassee.
It's in Tallahassee, yeah.
It's going to be tough. What time's the kickoff? I'm curious. I hope it's not a night game.
7 o'clock.
God. Okay. It's going to be a tough one. It's going to be tough. I know they don't got the best record, but it's going to be a tough one.
I want to ask you because you were one of our favorite people to interview when you were here because you always said what's on your mind. Kind of got you in trouble a little bit as a freshman and a redshirt freshman. When you said the things that you said, what in particular, when you came out there and said that you don't like to block, I remember that. I remember I was sitting there with the rest of the media. What was the conversation like when you went back and talked to Coach Pierman the next day after all those stories came out?
I can't even remember back that far. I remember the whole lazy legged topic, and it's kind of funny because I've embraced it at this point. It's my gamer tag when I play any Call of Duty or anything. It
Right.
kind of rolls off the tongue. It sounds good.
Love it.
But even when I went back and talked to the tight ends, that was kind of the biggest thing that they asked me about, because they had a picture of me making the catch in the natty, and they had how many plays we ran on offense, how many plays I played, and then what play it was that I made the catch. And they asked me, like, dude, how do you keep the same stamina? Coach Richardson asked me, and I'm like, it's probably you don't want to hear this, but like I sacrificed a lot of blocking to make big time catches like this. I mean, I was just so focused on making catches. It definitely hurt me once I got to the league and draft stock like that. But yeah, no, it was something I had to grow up. Definitely had to grow up freshman, sophomore year, because I didn't have great years. And it really took off for me junior and senior year when I kind of like locked it in, figured I was going to be the guy, and then put the work in the offseason.
Yeah, that's I'm glad you brought that up, because that's what I try to get people to say. Obviously, you're a tremendous athlete and you put up great numbers during your time, but you had to learn. I talked to Dwayne Allen as well, and he played behind Michael Palmer, and he talked about how he had to learn how to be a good blocker and how to do his technique right, to be a good tight end, to be a great tight end.
Yeah.
It's the same thing for you. It's like when you get in there, I guess a lot of people don't realize you guys are young men. You're coming out of high school. You're 17, 18 years old. You're going to say crazy things and do crazy things like all of us do.
Mm-hmm.
And, what was that process like? Just, growing up and going from a boy to a young man, and a young man that became one of the legends at Clemson in the tight end position.
Yeah, I think it's all about who is surrounded around me. From Coach Sweeney to Coach Pierman. I always did like a lot of finger pointing versus like looking in the mirror. And I think I did that all the way through my sophomore year. I was getting hurt a lot and kind of just, like I said, just pointing fingers, kind of blaming everybody else except for myself. It's kind of, y'all don't know this, but at one point I went to Coach Sweeney's office. I was like, hey man, like I think I'm out of here. Like I'm a transfer. I want to go. I told him I was going to get to UCF, and UCF actually went 0-12 the following year. But luckily enough, I stayed. And at that point is when I really put my head down and like really got to work. I think at the time it was me, and then there was Stanton Seconder, and it's kind of weird how Clemson's offense works, because once they get a really good tight end, for some reason after that person leaves, you don't really hear about the tight ends as much. Sometimes they want to go 4 wideouts, and then finally like, okay, let's use the tight ends again. It's very weird because it happened with Dwayne Allen to B Ford, and then from B Ford to when I started doing stuff my junior year. It's just always a weird little time frame in between. But I just really locked in. Sophomore year going into my junior year. Like you said, a lot of growing up, got to put myself around the right people, start living the right way outside of football, and I was able to get it done.
Hey, C Money wanted to ask us, who was the favorite player you played with?
You'll make some people mad here.
Nah, I don't have any enemies. I'd probably say it's Ben Bower, and I saw him the other day. I was able to talk to him, but it's just what he brought to the team. He was never the biggest guy, but he was the loudest, and I think he played a very vital role in the whole senior year and getting to that point. I mean, he was probably the best leader on the team. I mean, even during summer and during camp and stuff like that, when we're doing our 110-yard sprints, whatever we had to do. We had to do 18 of them, and that was kind of the challenge for the summer one. You had to do 18 to get through summer one. And Ben's out there, everybody's tired, everybody got done with 18. He's like, let's run 2 more. And you would imagine everybody would be like, no, heck no, like, we're not doing this. We're done. We completed it, but everybody was there and everybody was on the same mission. So I'd say Ben Bower, just because of the leader and the person he is.
Yeah, how was it? What was he like? I've heard stories. Obviously, I've talked to Ben myself, and so has Alex. But what was he like behind closed doors? Was that intensity 24/7?
Nah, actually, he's very chill behind closed doors. I don't know what he's probably the same way that he was when he was on the field, as far as in his gym now, the junkyard. But as far as off the field, no. I mean, he's probably just a regular Smo Joe dude, very laid back. But again, he brings the energy when he needs to. When the room is feeling very dead or anything like that, I mean, he's kind of the guy that gets everybody going. Kind of like a Coach Batson, like Joey Batson, the strength coach. I mean, he'll get everybody going if he needs to.
Yeah, Joey scares me, man. Nicest guy in the world, but man, when he gets in there, man, he scares me, dude. I'm just gonna be honest with you.
He did my 4 years there, but now going back and seeing him and sitting down with him, he's kind of like Ben. He's more relaxed dude. He's got kids and in-laws and stuff like that, and I'm sure grandkids on the way. So he's kind of dialed it back a little bit.
That's great.
What's it like for you just to see things from an outside perspective when you come back to Clemson and you're at practice or you go into the weight room, you're talking to the coaches? What's it kind of like for you to be from that outside perspective now versus when you were in it?
It's pretty sweet, especially going through that facility. I mean, the facility is insane. Everything that they have now on campus. I mean, you really never have to leave the facility. You can sleep there, eat there, do whatever you want to do. So it's cool from the aspect of seeing that we kind of built that. I mean, all the natties that we were to play for, #1 spots, all the playoffs we got to go to, the ACC championships, all that kind of played a role. Because that facility, before I went back the other day, the last time I was in it was when we were getting ready to go play in the 2016 national championship, and we were going through, there were hard hats, and they were kind of just telling us like, oh, this is going to go here. And you're trying to picture it. I've never been good at that, even with my house now. My wife kind of decorates everything. It's like, oh, picture this type of thing. And it's very hard to do, but now walking through it, it's kind of like, this is cool. I played a pretty big role in getting this done and developing this. And, but no, I love being a fan. I never got to tailgate when playing at Clemson. So now I get to tailgate and meet fans and just be a dad. It's been cool.
Do you tell all those young guys that are there now enjoying this nice facility? Do you say, hey guys, you should appreciate this because we didn't have this, and we didn't get all this stuff that you guys had, and we're the ones that brought the natty first.
I don't think you could tell these kids anything. I mean, just like as far as football and how it's been and the NIL, the transfer. I mean, it's tough. It's not like what it was, and those guys now. I mean, if they don't like it, they'll just go somewhere else. But luckily enough, we don't have that issue with Clemson too much. I think it's very tight knit, very still family oriented.
Let me ask you this, because you said earlier you walked into Coach Sweeney's office. I guess you would have been a sophomore or something that year.
Yep.
You walked in and said, hey, I want to leave. Would Jordan Leggett, 19-year-old Jordan Leggett, would you have done that? Would you have jumped in the transfer portal, do you think? If it was available? What do you think?
It's hard to say. If it was that easy, I think the reason I ultimately stayed was, again, I think at that point I kind of had a come to Jesus moment and kind of look in the mirror type of thing, because I forget exactly what Coach Sweeney told me, but I mean, he kind of told me, like, think about it like UCF. Like, he kind of just painted the picture for me, like, who is UCF? Like, what have they done? Like, at least here we're winning games. Like, you have the opportunity to win games. You're halfway done with your degree. Just all these different things that he was telling me in my ear. But at the same time, me and my wife now, we were dating in college, so there was a lot that kind of played into it. With the reason I stayed. And hopefully now, if I was back then and the transfer portal was as easy it is now, hopefully I would still made the same decision to stay.
Would you give a young man, he comes up to you and says, hey, look, I'm thinking about entering the transfer portal. I know you didn't have the best start to your career at Clemson, but you finished it great. What changed your mind? What kind of advice would you give that young man? Because obviously you did stick it out and it did work out for you.
It's hard to say, because I know kids expect. Because when I got to college, I kind of saw I'm good enough to play at the next level, so let me go get my degree for free. And then once I was at college, I realized, okay, I'm pretty good at this. Maybe I can go get some money out of this and go into the NFL. So I think it all depends on what the kids want. I mean, some kids are out here chasing money, and I mean, sure, it's fine, good and dandy. I mean, this is probably the most money you're going to make in your whole life, and so it's hard to say. I guess it just depends on where that kid is at, who's in front of him, if they have that fighting mentality or if they think they'll have better odds somewhere else. But I'm not the type to tell somebody not to do something. If that's kind of where their heart is going, I'll kind of, just like Coach Sweeney, I'll kind of paint the picture like, here's your pros and here's your cons. Like, here you go. Like, help him make his decision ultimately.
How important do you think it was that you stuck around, not just for the football standpoint, but from a life standpoint? And also, what do you think it is about Clemson that's kind of shielded Clemson from a lot of the transfer issues that maybe some other schools are having just in terms of filling a roster?
Yeah, like I said, as long as Coach Sweeney's there, I'm gonna be back. And it was kind of funny. That was kind of one thing I asked Coach Sweeney when we were sitting at practice and they were doing their stretches and warm ups. And I told him, I was like, Coach, I know you get asked all the time this transfer portal question, and I was like, hey man, like I just want to say I appreciate what you do and how you approach it. And I told him, I was like, a lot of people don't understand, but when you fill a roster to just hopefully win the next game or get to the whatever championship this year, you're not really developing these kids. And I told him, I was like, this team has been together for I don't even know 3 years now. Cade's going into his 4th year. All these guys are kind of growing and developing together, and I'm like, that's dangerous because these guys know each other. They're learning. They're getting better together, and that's kind of what I told him. I was like, dude, I love the way you do it. I hope everything that's happening in college football doesn't change who you are, because I mean, who you are is kind of one of my most favorite things about Clemson and going back now is just how special he is and what he's done for that college. And he told me, I asked him, I was like, how long are you going to coach for? And he said he's going to do it till he's 65. So I'm praying that all those years are at Clemson, hopefully.
See, this is why I love Jordan Leggett, because this is what he did for us when we were interviewing him on the practice fields and stuff. He'd give us a little scoop that nobody else would give us, and we just hear that Dabo Swinney stayed till he's 65 at least. All right.
I'm going to write it down. I'll have it written down back here.
I'm going to ask Coach Swinney about this on Wednesday now.
Like I said, I hope he stays at Clemson forever. He has just changed that program so much. So it's fun to watch now.
Yeah, I was going to ask you now this year, you've seen Coach Swinney adjust, and he's, it's a changing game. It's, you said it yourself, it's totally different than when you played.
Yeah.
First of all, how do you think he's adjusted? Secondly, what are your thoughts on this year's team? Because a lot of people were giving them crap after that Georgia game and saying, oh, they should have went to the transfer portal, blah, blah, blah. But, here they are 3 games later where they've dominated. They look like the old Clemson.
Yeah.
Your overall thoughts on everything I just asked you there?
I don't think he shifted. I mean, even when I was at Clemson, I played in a lot of big games for the first games of the season, which I absolutely hated. I wish we had a starter game and then we had a big game the next year. But obviously, there's a lot of money in these neutral site games to kick the season off. But even back when I played, I mean, my senior year when we won the Natty, we beat Auburn. I don't even know where they ended at, but we beat them, whatever it was, 13-10. Very low scoring for what Clemson does. And I really believe that we've never played well in the first game. Duke, a couple of years ago, I think it's just always hard for us coming out of the offseason, coming out of camp, practicing for what your opponent did last year and then doing it against your own guy. It's just very different. And I don't think we've ever done well with the first game, but I love the way the team looks now. I think they're really building their confidence. I love the way Cade looks. I love the way the group of receivers look. The tight ends look great. The defense always looks good. So I'm very excited. I mean, I don't think there's really anything stopping us from getting to where we want to be at. Miami showed us last, I think, week or 2 weeks ago that they're beatable. So I'm not overwhelmed by anybody that we have to face on our schedule. Obviously, we got to treat each game just like it's the last game and go out there and give it our best shot. But no, I love it. I guess one thing I wish I could have changed about the first game is letting those young guys play a lot more. Because that's what Swinney's known for. I mean, even when Mike Williams came out, you heard about him as a true freshman. He just throws them in there, gives them a deep ball. Deion Kane throws them in there, gives them a deep ball. So it was kind of weird not seeing those guys out there in the first game, and then just seeing them show up and come on the scene in the second and third and fourth game. But I feel confident. I feel good. I feel like we could win an ACC championship and go into this 12-team playoff.
Do you think maybe he didn't play him because maybe it was the stage, because they were on a neutral site, they were playing Georgia, maybe he felt maybe the stage was too big for him at that time?
It probably played a role. But I mean, obviously in games like that, it's tough. Like, especially when you start going down. I mean, you kind of don't want to make adjustments or do anything like that, and that's why I give Coach Saban so much grace. I mean, when he pulled Jalen Hurts and put in Tua, I forget what it was. It might have been overtime or it might have been a fourth quarter. I mean, that's just crazy. The fact that he did that and they were able to go in there and actually win the game because of it. But yeah, it's hard to say. But like I said, I trust Coach Swinney with everything, and I think he's gonna take us back to hopefully a Final Four, if not another Natty. Because I think a lot of teams out there, I think everybody's beatable. I mean, there's a lot of good-looking teams. SEC looks really good, really dominant with Alabama, Georgia, Tennessee. Texas looks really good as well.
Mm-hmm.
But I got confidence. I mean, I think as long as we can get there, we can make a name for ourselves again.
Jordan, how great's it been for you seeing the explosiveness on offense in these last 3 games and seeing things really kind of let loose on that side of the ball after a few years where it kind of felt like they were banging up against the brick wall?
It definitely looks good. Like I said, I wish we would have had an easier first game because I think it's all about just building their confidence. I mean, we got to. I'm not even a young team because I talked about how much we've developed, but as far as the receivers, you really don't hear too much about them. I mean, we've had so many great receivers come through, and you really haven't heard too much about this receiving core. I mean, obviously we got Moff in the backfield, and then we had Shipley before that, which I was just like, give the ball to Shipley every single time because that was kind of our identity. We went from a pass catching full speed offense to a running game. But absolutely, Maffa's probably one of my favorite players. I got to meet him as well. He's probably one of the coolest kids ever. But I love seeing how explosive we can be. And I think those games that we had against App State and NC State, just putting up those points, I mean, it gives those kids all the confidence in the world that they can go out there and play with anybody. And I'm going to be a little disappointed if I don't see it again this weekend. I mean, they should go out there and not have a field day. Obviously, it's going to be a tough game, 7 o'clock kickoff. They're going to be doing the chant. And down at FSU, it's a hard place to play. But, I mean, they got all the confidence in the world.
I want to ask you about that because this is a team that's got their backs against the wall. And, you always told when you play a desperate team, you're playing a dangerous team.
Yeah.
How dangerous is this game for the Tigers this week? And should Clemson fans not just throw all their marbles in the hat and think the game's over? What should they expect on Saturday night down in Tallahassee?
I agree with what you said. I think they're a very dangerous team. And the fact that DJ is not playing and it's a quarterback, I mean, I don't know too much about him. I hate quarterback changes, even with I think it was NC State. That was his first time starting as well. Or not NC State. I forget who it was, but
yeah, CJ Bailey. You're right.
Yeah, that makes me nervous. A kid that we haven't seen before. We don't know what he's going to do. He might come in and start his Heisman campaign. Like, we have no idea. But I Bleav that as Clemson goes in and plays the way they've been playing and kind of just play to their standard versus playing down to any team, like hearing all that rhetoric in the media about FSU and how bad they are, all the turnovers, what they've done on offense. I feel like once you start buying into that is when you start playing down to that level. And once you do that, then you become very vulnerable. So I'm hoping that they go in and just stick to what they've been doing and just keep the blinders on and keep going forward.
Jordan, kind of wanted to ask you to update the fans on what you're doing these days. I know you got a family, a career you're pursuing. Kind of let the people in on what's Jordan Leggett doing these days.
Yeah, this is actually my favorite time of my life so far. I got 2 little ones at home. Theodore, we call him Teddy. His birthday's in November, so he'll be turning 4 years old. And then I got a little girl, Olivia, who just turned 2 in July. So it's been super fun. Being a dad is super awesome. Just getting to see little people like you and watching them grow up and enjoy and fall in love with everything that you love and enjoy and love to do. So Olivia's kind of my football watcher. We'll sit there and watch College Game Day and sit there and watch sports together. We already talked, me and my wife, about my son playing football, and neither of us, I mean, we don't really want him to play. Hopefully he could pick up some golf because I love golf currently. That's probably one of my favorite things to do. I kind of wish I would have picked it up back in high school because I definitely wouldn't have came to Clemson playing football. I wouldn't have won a natty, which is unfortunate, but I've been making a lot of money all the way until I'm 40 years old playing golf. But other than that, I work at a company called International Paper. It's kind of like The Office. We sell cardboard boxes. We are the largest in all of North America. It's not sexy. I tell people I'm just a glorified paper boy, but I love it. I get to work with a great group of people, and I get to meet new people every day. I'm just like a sales rep, so I'm just going around to different manufacturing facilities, but I really enjoy it. And my schedule is kind of my own, so I get to do different stuff, come up to Clemson, see the guys. So it's been awesome.
So is there a Dwight? I take it looking like you're more like you're more like Jim, and so is there a Dwight and is there a Michael Scott in your office?
You can kind of see a little bit of everybody. Yeah, it's really funny to see, but it's an older workforce as far as the sales reps go. But it's just different. I mean, I never knew the industry existed. Obviously, I knew boxes were being shipped around from Amazon or whatever it is, but to the extent of what we're selling boxes, I mean, it's super cool.
That's awesome. Well, one last question for you, because you said your son there, you don't know if you're going to let him play football or not. Is you going to let that be his choice? Because you said you don't want him to do it, which means it sounds like you're going to let that be his choice if he gets old enough and he wants to play.
If for some reason he's just begging us to play football, or if he just loves it so much or wants to be like his dad, sure, we might have a different conversation at that point. I don't really care for this young contact sports. I Bleav that if you're good at football, you can definitely train for it, get good at it, and then maybe play tackle. Because I think tackling is a big part of the game anyway, so you got to get used to getting hit. So I think playing in high school will probably be the earliest I would let my son play if he wanted to. But I don't know. There's just so many other sports out there that you can get paid a lot of money for, that's a lot easier on your body. So hopefully he'll go that way. But at the same time, I mean, you see the memorabilia in the back. Maybe he'll want to follow in my footsteps. We'll see.
Yeah.
I wish I would have played golf in high school too, man. You get to play a bunch of free rounds and you get to be good instead of going out there and hitting everything in the trees like I do.
Like I suck at golf, so I never, even when I was younger, I sucked at it. So I don't never once said I want to be a golfer. Basketball player, absolutely, I wanted to be, but not.
Yeah, you couldn't pay me to go golfing back in high school, but now, I mean, I wish I can golf every day. So it's different.
It is. It helps sell papers, doesn't it? Or boxes.
That's one of the biggest reason why I wanted to get into the sales role. And I mean, a lot of the guys I played football with back at Clemson and this team now, I mean, a lot of them, they don't know it yet, but as much as we like to compete on the field, I mean, being able to get a salary as well as getting paid commission, I mean, that's kind of like competing off of the field. So a lot of these guys are going to end up in sales roles as well. And that's ultimately why I wanted to get into it, was for the competitive aspect, but also, playing golf with customers was a big one for me.
Yeah, it helps you get sales, man. It's a great business model. Trust me.
Sweet.
That's why I've sucked at both. Man, Jordan, we appreciate you being here, man. It's been great. I know you got things to do and all, but we appreciate you coming on and joining us and talking Clemson football. And man, someday we'll love to have you back sometime if you want to. Yeah,
sounds good. Look forward to it. Thanks, fellas.
All right, thanks. That was former Clemson tight end Jordan Leggett joining the podcast today. We appreciate Jordan coming on, Alex, and just giving us his perspective on life, his team, and everything else. Man, that was just a great interview.
Yeah, and I can't think of, like we talked about at the top, a better guest to talk about the Clemson-Florida State rivalry than a guy who played a huge role in Clemson's ascent back to the top of the ACC and dethroning Florida State, for lack of a better term, in 2015. He mentioned that game senior year, too. He had 5 catches for 122 yards. He kind of sold himself short there.
Yes, he did.
I think he said he had 60 yards, so double that.
He said he got on that last possession. He got
on that last possession,
Yeah, that's what he was selling there. But, hey, the biggest news that came out of that is he said Dabo Swinney's staying until he's 65. That's
he did say he hopes it's still in orange, though. He said, Clemson fans, don't get your hopes up too high. You need to show Dabo a little love and keep him in the orange.
And we got Coach Swinney tomorrow on our Wednesday teleconference with him after practice. You know me.
You're going to say Jordan Leggett told me.
Because I got to, because when Jordan Leggett was there, it was always Jordan Leggett said this, and Dabo would be like, I got to make him stop talking to you.
So basically, Dabo's saying he wants to get the full state retirement. That's what I heard. He wants to stay till 65 so he can get the full state retirement. I don't know how it works for salaries like his.
I thought it was great. But if you think about it, Dabo, let's see, he came to Clemson in 2003. So if he stays, he's 50. Let's see, Dabo's 55 now. Will be 55 this year. So that's 10 more years, right? He came in 2003. So that's 10 more years, or at least right now, that's 21 years. That's 31 years. Yeah, he's over the 30-year mark, Alex. I think you're correct. That would get him right. Got to get him over in that retirement age for the.
He's going to get that full state retirement. That's what we heard from Jordan Leggett on breaking news on Bleav in Clemson football.
Hey, that's what we do here. We break news on Bleav in Clemson football. We're here talking football, breaking news. Love it though, because so the fans understand. Jordan Leggett, as the media, we love to get him because he would say whatever's on his mind. As you can see, it's a great interview.
Those are the guys that always win that media award.
They win the Tim Beret Award.
Yeah, the Tim Beret Award. It's guys that say whatever comes on their mind.
Right. And so and Jordan was notorious for saying things that Coach Swinney and Coach Pierre would be like, why in the world did he say that? And so it's going to be great tomorrow to kind of approach Dabo with that question tomorrow.
He's going to be like, Man, they're still letting Jordan talk to the media.
So he's got. It's just great because he'd always be like, "Yeah, I gotta let Jordan. I gotta make sure Jordan's not talking to you guys anymore." So anyway,
But I mean, what I really appreciated from the interview too is that perspective of him going into Sweeney's office and saying he's going to transfer, and kind of peeling back the curtain a little bit on what those conversations look like, and that I think Dabo kind of gets this picture painted by media people that don't know him, that he's probably like, oh well, get out of here, or whatever whatever
Right.
people would say, that how he approached that conversation. Jordan said no, he just laid out my options.
Yeah, that's what he does with everybody. He talks to. He likes to make sure that when a player gets in that situation, he's able to get every piece of information for that player available. And if that young man still wants to go, then Coach Sweeney's going to say, okay, you go do what you got to do. You think's best for you and your family, and we'll support you 100%. Dabo's right when he says that. So like when DJ left, you heard Dabo this past week. He talked about how he loves DJ and how DJ is a great young man, and he did everything right when he was at Clemson, and he had no problems with DJ wanting to do what he thought was best for DJ. And you can go to the Clemson Insider, shameless plug, and you can see the article that I wrote on that story. And so, that's kind of Dabo. And I'm with you. I thought that was great insight to, first of all, Jordan Leggett's thinking when he was 19 years old, what he was thinking and wanted to do, and then Coach Sweeney's way how he handled it.
Oh no, absolutely. And yeah, what I liked most about that is what he said, that he laid out the options and just wanted him to have a full picture. Because you have seen guys transfer from Clemson, and there's obviously no ill will, like Chase Bryce or Hunter Johnson. I mean, Hunter Johnson transferred out and transferred back. So it's not an issue. Sometimes it's better for a guy to go to a new spot. Sometimes he wants playing time, wants to prove himself, and there's nothing wrong with that. But it's good to hear that perspective from a guy who was in a situation where he could have went, and instead he goes down as one of the best people to ever wear the orange and white, and goes down as national champion. Gets drafted in the 5th round of the NFL draft. I mean, it's pretty cool to hear that progression from going into the office wanting to leave to being one of the best to wear the uniform.
And just to put some perspective on it, Jordan Leggett, he broke all of Benny Cunningham's record. He broke all of Dwayne Allen's records. I mean, those are legends there, right? I mean, he broke those records, and we're going to try to get Dwayne Allen on the show later this year, and we'll talk to Dwayne about the conversations he had with Jordan Leggett, because Jordan came in after Leggett had left, but I think they had a little bit of a relationship, at least how you handle things and things of that nature. And Dwayne's journey through Clemson is very similar to Leggett's, very similar. And so it'll be great to kind of hear him that one day when we get him on as well, maybe here in a few episodes down the road. But yeah, so now Alex, but he did talk about DJ Uiagalelei in that interview and what's going to happen here. And I think that's a good point to kind of bring up, as you brought up here, kind of maybe talk about the injuries a little bit. DJ Uiagalelei likely isn't going to play. Now, officially, Florida State has not released that, but reports have been out that he's having some procedure done on his hand, and he's going to be done for the next several weeks, I should say, before he gets back. So it doesn't look like he's going to play, and they're going to end up starting the young man who started in the ACC championship game.
Brock Glenn.
Brock Glenn, who didn't look great against Louisville, but keep in mind, he was starting in a game that he wasn't, his first ever game was in a championship game, first ever start for that young man. So yeah, that was a difficult situation. I don't believe he played at Georgia because he got hurt in that game, didn't he?
Yeah, he didn't play that full game.
He didn't play against Georgia because he got injured, if I'm not mistaken. So
yeah, and it's kind of been a rocky situation there at Florida State involving Brock Glenn in particular, because a lot of people thought this was going to be the future of their program at quarterback after the season last year, and then he's kind of thrust in the limelight before he's ready with Jordan Travis getting hurt, and then everybody knows what happens after that. That Mike Norvell basically made a public declaration that he didn't have confidence he was the future of the program at quarterback. And then all the murmurs to start the year, and now here we are, Brock Glenn playing again. I think it was Faxon Childress. I'm going to give him credit because I think he said in like August or July that DJ wouldn't be the starting quarterback when Clemson and Florida State played. But
And
yeah,
Faxon's on 105.9 the Roar,
105.5
the Roar in
Go
the
with
upstate
the
on the
old
Clemson.
station.
Yeah, I know. He's in the upstate on the Roar here in the upstate. That's who Alex is talking about. So I want to make sure people know who we're talking about. They may not know who Faxon is, but yeah, Faxon did say that, and I remember when he said it too, that he probably says DJ's not going to play by the time the Clemson game gets around, and sure enough, it's going to hold true. It doesn't sound like he's playing. But Alex, we got a couple other injuries. We got Peter Woods, Antonio Williams, Colin Sadler. I can tell you this: Colin Sadler's going to play. It sounds like, according to Dabo Sweeney. Sounds like Antonio Williams is practicing because he said he's practicing.
Didn't say he's at practice. He said he's practicing.
So that's a good sign for Clemson that he's possibly playing this week. But then he just said Peter Woods is day to day.
Day to day. He's day to day. He's been day to day for 5 weeks.
If I'm a betting man, Peter Woods is not playing the game. That if I'm a betting man, he didn't dress last week. He was in street clothes. He didn't even come out for warmups, and he was in street clothes for warmups. So where the week before Tyler Brown came out and gave it a go, and then saw he couldn't go, and then do it. Peter Woods didn't even give it a go. Like he wasn't even going to play. So we knew that right off the bat he wasn't going to play. So I think that's the case here today. I'll be surprised if he plays. Hey, we don't know definitely, but we'll see. We never know. We'll see.
Yeah, I'd be willing to place money in that direction if I had to bet on it as well. It's just the day-to-day has meant a lot of things this season when Dabo says it, but like you said, Tyler Brown, you saw him come out and go through the process and be available first. Now, is it possible that Peter Woods could be available on Saturday?
Well, that's
maybe that he's dressed out and that he's available.
Yeah, that's a different thing, being available. Yeah. Totally different thing. By the way, Alan Watts said, we've been doing this show and doing other things. I've been at Clemson press conferences today and all. Saw a quote from Mike Norvell today that DJ would not be available for the Clemson game. So,
yeah, and that's been reported.
Alan, I haven't seen that yet, but I'm not saying it's not true or not, but that makes sense to me because that goes with the reports, what we've heard.
Yeah, I mean, every major national media outlet that covers college sports reported yesterday that he's not going to be playing in the game and may miss a few weeks. Mm-hmm. So I would be, you color me shocked if DJ Uyunglele is, dressed out in a uniform.
I want to see if he's going to be on the field Saturday. That's what I'm interested to see. Because sometimes it's the athlete's choice. They don't have to be on the field when they're injured, And so, we'll see. Tyler Brown, yes, Tyler Brown did play and had 7 catches the other day. So, yeah, we know Tyler Brown, but we're talking about Antonio Williams, not Tyler Brown. Antonio Williams, if we said Brown, we're mistaken. We're sorry.
Well, we were talking about Brown, but we were talking about how his process to recovery.
Oh, gotcha. Yeah, we were talking about his recovery the week before, not last week, but the NC State game. How
he was available
because he was available.
Yes. Yeah, he was available for the NC State game, but didn't play.
Correct.
And then played the next week. So that's
kind of Peter Woods was not available last week at all, and he didn't even give it a go. That's why we're kind of using that generally with Coach Sweeney, so you guys could get a play on it for us in the media. How we notice things. If a guy comes out, and when we say warm-ups, we mean they're just in their t-shirts and stuff, and they're doing their stretches and stuff like that. They come out and they'll run the field, they'll jog it a little bit and see how they're doing. Generally, if a guy's going to try to give it a go and he's been on the injured list, if he is doing that, then he's available. We know he's available. It doesn't mean he's going to play, but we know he's available at that point. Peter Woods last week, this is the Stanford game, he wasn't even doing that. He was sitting on the sidelines with the ball cap on, wasn't wearing cleats, and was dressed in regular street clothes. So he didn't even give it a go last week, which means to tell me this week maybe he may come out, he may dress, he may be available, he may come out and give it a go. But, being how Clemson generally they go these different steps, I just can't see him going from he's on the sideline, nothing, to all of a sudden he's playing the next week. I just don't see that.
I'd be surprised.
It rarely happens.
I'd be surprised, in particular matchup wise too. I mean, Florida State hadn't really shown a dominance in the trenches, so it's not like you're going to force them to come back early for the game. So
And John Grant asked us on Facebook, what is Peter Wood's actual injury? We know he got hurt on an illegal block, but haven't officially diagnosed this. Yeah, the team has not released that. That is something that they don't do anymore. They don't say exactly what the injury is anymore. There's a lot of reasons why they don't do that. Hip is one of them. If it's Dabo's always said, if it's a season kind of ending injury or a serious injury, he will go out and say it if if the player gives him permission of what's going on. But if it's not, if it's something that like Peter Woods is going through, then he'll hold back on what that information is and wait till the player gets back on the field and can say it himself when he talks to the media. So that's the kind of the way Dabo's been doing it for the last several years. So we don't know what the official is. If I had to guess, and this is just me guessing, it's a lower leg injury because of the chop block. It's more than likely probably related to the knee, if I had to guess. Now, I'm not saying that's it. I'm just saying that's a guess for me, being that the length of time he's been already missed and what the injury was when he got the chop block. So wouldn't you say that's a good guess, Alex?
I'd say it's a good guess. Also, positive sign. He's walking. He's walking around on the sideline. He's wearing shorts. So you can tell he doesn't have a crazy stiff knee brace on or something like that. He's moving around. He's walking. So that's a positive sign, and that's why he's day to day.
That's right.
Out for the season.
And to me, it's been a blessing for Clemson because they've gotten to see other guys play now. And we saw Lawson get more playing time this past week. I think we saw, and to me, Hoffler at times looked really good and was making plays and was doing things. Now, he did get caught up sometimes up inside, and he went for the dive guy too much and, just wasn't playing with his eyes as much. And that's why they had to bring Parker over. But I still think those are valuable experience for a guy like Hoffler to get and a guy like Lawson to get. So there is some benefit to Peter Woods being out because now these guys wouldn't have played as much if it wasn't for that.
Especially at that position, because, all offseason, if you guys listen to us leading up to the year, we talked about how depth at that position was a concern. Mm-hmm. Well, now you're getting experience for those guys. Those guys aren't, inexperienced freshmen anymore. They're starting to grow up kind of before our eyes, and they're getting those live game reps. It's one thing to do it at practice. It's another thing to do it against Stanford or NC State or Florida State this weekend.
And want to go ahead and just kind of get things going a little bit on the series. Clemson, Florida State series, as y'all guys know, Florida State leads the series 21-15. Clemson has won 13 of the last 20 meetings in the series, Alex. And just to kind of go back, Florida State holds a 21-15 advantage. It dates back to 1970. That was a 38-13 win by Florida State in Tallahassee. As I mentioned, Clemson has won 13 of the last 20 meetings, and the Tigers have won 7 of the last 8 against the Seminoles, with the last Florida State win coming in double overtime. And the win before that, Alex, before Clemson's 7 straight, it was also a overtime win for the Seminoles. So Clemson has had the hand in this rivalry the last 20 years, since Charlie Whitehurst. To 2003 Charlie Whitehurst, the Derek Hamilton game, as I like to call it. They both went off in that game. Ever since that game, Clemson has really owned this rivalry. They really have.
Yeah, and it's kind of crazy, I'm sure, for a lot of Clemson fans to think that way because of the way that Florida State controlled the series when they came into the conference. But, I mean, Clemson under Dabo Swinney and Clemson in the Bowden Bowl really started to turn the tide in this rivalry and shift it towards Clemson and make it, actually a rivalry. Let's point that out too. There wasn't too much rivalry for a few years when the series started, but now Clemson's
first 11 meetings after Florida State joined the ACC, it was not. You're correct.
Yeah, but now Clemson's taking control of the series, and I mean this is a game that, with the exception of the Kenny Pickett year, has determined the ACC champion.
Yeah, 14 of the last 15 years. The Florida State Clemson winner has gone on to win the ACC championship. And if you go back to 2008, I Bleav they've played for it every year. So except for the Kenny Pickett Wake Forest year. Yeah. So it's crazy that since 2008, it's either been Clemson or Florida State every year in the ACC championship game. And so maybe that's going to be the case this year. We'll know. We do know this. If it's going to be the case this year, it's Clemson.
It ain't going to be Florida State.
It ain't going to be Florida State regardless of what happens on Saturday. But if it is, we know it's Clemson because Florida State has no chance. Speaking of Bobby Bowden and Bobby Bowden Field and the Bowden Bowl you just talked about, Dabo Swinney going for the ACC record on Bobby Bowden Field, the guy he's trying to beat, and the record is held by one Bobby Bowden. Bobby Bowden holds the ACC record with 173 wins. Dabo tied it last week with that win over Stanford. That's 173 ACC wins.
Yep.
Obviously, Bobby Bowden won a whole lot more before they joined the conference. But from the time he joined the conference in 1992 till he retired after the 2009 season, Bobby Bowden won 173 ACC games. Well, Dabo Swinney now about to tie it. And this is only this is every game. This is against everybody. So people need to understand it's not ACC competition. It's just overall record since you've been in the conference. And so Dabo with the win, Alex, on Saturday can overtake Bobby Bowden's record, which is quite an honor in my opinion.
Yeah, I mean, to win the most games of any ACC coach is pretty damn impressive. I mean, there have been some great football coaches that have come out of that league over the years, and Bobby Bowden obviously is the one that everybody knows as the Hall of Fame legendary coach. It was nice to hear Dabo talking about it today too, about how it's kind of always going to be Bobby's, and talking about how much Bobby meant to him as a mentor. Especially with the awkwardness that could have been there from the transition with Dabo taking over for Tommy Bowden, Bobby's son, but the way Bobby was so gracious to him in that transition and really developed a friendship with him. That was pretty cool to hear him talk about that in the press conference.
And Alex, me and you are both guys of faith, and we always, Dabo loves to use a joke, and I love that joke. He always says, God never says, God doesn't have oops, right? It doesn't happen, So it's like Dabo is breaking this record on Bobby Bowden Field for a reason. If he does the opportunity, I should say, for a reason, because Bobby Bowden's such a great man, and Dabo had such respect for him and admiration for him. I think it's fitting if Dabo can win, if Clemson can win on Saturday, that he does it on that field, just as he did when he set the record at Clemson. He broke it on Frank Howard Field. That's, and that to me, that was fitting that he did it on Frank Howard's field. So God doesn't say, oops, these things happen for a reason. The opportunity's there for Dabo, again, for a reason to do that. And I think it is because of that admiration he has for Coach Bowden all through these years, and what that fan meant to him and what Bobby Bowden has meant to him. I think it's amazing that Dabo's mom and Bobby Bowden went to the same high school.
Yeah.
I mean, what are the odds of that,
Yeah.
That's nuts, and so I love all the connections and stuff like that. But Alex, we need to talk about, one more thing before that. And I talked to Ross Taylor about it after the game the other day. As Ross Taylor is Clemson's sports information director for football. So the ACC a few years back, this is before Ross got there, they used to have Bobby Bowden held the all-time ACC record, which was 118 wins. That's counting the one conference championship game he won. Okay. It's 118. At that time, Dabo was like second or third in catching Bobby Bowden, but he was a long way behind, so it really didn't matter. So I went and look up the record this past summer, and they have changed that now to where now it's only regular season wins. And here's why they've changed it. Because the ACC, because now you can have North Carolina and Wake Forest play against each other in a non-conference game.
Right.
So they have to make it to where these are just conference games only. But here's the problem I have with that is the ACC championship game is a conference game. It is the ultimate conference game. It is for the championship.
Yeah,
so
I do understand though that the game didn't exist for all of Bobby Bowden's.
But it's still a conference game. I mean, Frank Howard only played how many conference games a year?
Like 5 or 6.
5 or 6, right? He didn't play.
Or it'd have been 5.
He didn't play 8 or 9, right?
Yeah.
Like they do now. So my point being is, like, why does that matter? Like, it's still a conference game. It's the ultimate conference game because it's the championship game. So to me, it's got to count. And if they make it count, then Dabo Swinney is only 3 behind Bobby Bowden for breaking that record for ACC wins just against ACC competition.
Yeah, it is kind of weird that they would.
He's 12 behind 105 and so see what I'm saying? Those, because Dabo's got 8 conference championship wins. That's 8 more wins added onto his tally.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah, no, you're right. I mean, and now, theoretically, you could have the opportunity for more in a 12-team playoff. Clemson could play Miami
And that's another thing.
in
I'm
a
like,
round 2 matchup in the college football playoff.
well, that wouldn't count though, because that would go under. It's not a conference game because it's not played within the ACC season. An ACC championship game is. So that's my argument. And
Yeah, but the SEC doesn't count it either. They
Look at
don't
this.
count the SEC championship.
Well, they should. Here's why.
either.
Here's my argument. They should. If you're giving Dabo Swinney the overall record for 100, and they're tied for 173 wins overall right now, right? So you're giving them the overall record and saying all these games count. Okay, then why all of a sudden the championship game in your own conference doesn't count? It makes no sense to me. I understand you don't count it toward the conference record, but it is the conference championship game. This is something I'm going to talk with the people at the ACC about that keep the stats and official records. I'm going to talk to them about this because I think I have a good argument. And if they want to use if they want to use your Frank Howard argument, which is like, well, back in the day they didn't play as many games. Exactly, they didn't. But you're not counting the other 3 extra conference games everybody plays every year? You're not counting those either? Because if you want to,
you're not wrong. You're playing a 12-game season too, 12-game regular season.
Right, you're playing a longer season and everything. You got to count it.
I mean, you could play 16 games.
I mean, North Carolina, Wake Forest playing a non-conference game, which is ridiculous. They should never do that. But them playing a non-conference game like that, it has nothing to do with an ACC championship game. It's not even on the same spectrum. The ACC championship game is the ultimate ACC game. That's like saying the ACC basketball tournament doesn't count.
Well, it doesn't count on your ACC record on the schedule. Either. It doesn't.
I know it does, and that's fine because that's regular season record. But your overall ACC, if you're saying overall ACC wins, conference championship game is an ACC win.
Yeah.
That's my argument.
I mean, you won the ACC, so it would, by nature,
my thing is they should have 2 sets of records. They should have overall regular season ACC wins, and then overall ACC wins counting conference championship games.
Yep.
That's how they should do it, in my opinion. I'm just saying. I just think it's ridiculous not to, because you're just ignoring 8 games, yet you're giving Dabo Swinney 8 credit wins on the overall record, but you're not giving him the credit on the other one. And it is an ACC game. Don't tell me it's not, because it's for the doggone championship. It's an ACC game.
And John Grant, the Notre Dame win would not count as ACC, except in the one season when Notre Dame was an ACC member. Yep, 2020.
Wins again. Hold on. Its wins against Notre Dame count? Yes, it does, because Notre Dame was a member of the Atlantic Coast Conference.
Right. Only in 2020.
Only in 2020. So Clemson's win over Notre Dame doesn't count as an ACC win. That's correct, which is hogwash.
Right. Yeah. Clemson's win against Notre Dame does not count, but Notre Dame's win against Clemson in the regular season counts.
That's hogwash. Clemson won the championship.
Notre Dame. Hey, Notre Dame fans, you can put the feather in your cap. You have more ACC wins against Clemson than Clemson has against you.
Yeah, and that's ridiculous. With Clemson, but by the way, you lost to Clemson in the ACC championship game. You figure that one out. Who was that said that question?
John Grant.
John, you just helped my argument that I will make to the Atlantic Coast Conference, and I'm gonna do this in person because I do better in person arguments than emails. So, because I get real fired up, and that's what they get to see.
Just send them these 20 minutes of this podcast, and just send them the last 20 minutes.
We got to get to this game itself. Alex, Clemson, Florida State, Saturday night, 7 p.m. in Tallahassee on ESPN. What are your thoughts?
Man, it's. I'd like to say that it's different than the way I thought the game would be going into it. Mm-hmm. I mean, it is to some degree. Neither of us had Florida State at 1-4.
No,
going into
I didn't think they'd have a great season, but I did not see 1-4.
Yeah, I think we both had them at like 3-2. I think is where me and you both had them. We had them losing to Georgia Tech and SMU.
If not 2-3, but not 1-4. I can tell you that.
Yeah, definitely didn't have them 1-4, so it's taking a lot of wind out of the sails. I do like what Jordan Leggett pointed out, that when you have a new quarterback come in, and even though we've seen a little bit of Brock Glenn last year, a whole offseason makes a world of difference, and a half a season practice makes a world of difference. Mm-hmm. You have to account for those things, but this is a game that Clemson should handle. This is a game where Clemson should dominate from start to finish. Mm-hmm. If we're going to be honest, just what the two teams have put on tape that's what should happen. Now that doesn't mean you got to beat them, 56-2 or something. It's
Right.
nothing crazy like that. But this is a game that shouldn't be in doubt.
No 59-10 wins is what you're telling me.
Or 40-14.
Yeah.
It could be 40-14. You're still going on the road.
59-10 was the score when they were down there in 2018 when the
guy was reading the book and they were playing Eastbound and Down, and
then Florida State got the proverbial garbage touchdown late that kept Clemson from setting a record in Tallahassee, which they would have set the all-time record, margin of victory over Florida State by anybody over Florida State in the history of Florida State's football program. But doggone it, if the guy didn't get a garbage touchdown to make 49 points instead of 56 points. So anyway.
Yeah, but this is a game Clemson should handle. And, this is a game, too, that Clemson wants to go out there. And, the other thing, too, you have to think about in this 12-team playoff era. If you're Clemson, obviously you want to win the ACC and give yourself the automatic bid. But you also want to give yourself some style points during the year in this 12-team playoff.
Yeah.
You want to look good winning.
The SEC's got so many teams, and the Big Ten is going to have so many teams vying for at-large bid. You got to make yourself look good to get in that at-large bid if you need to be. Now, if you go win the conference, who cares? But if you got to get that at-large bid, you want to make sure you look good doing it.
And I know this isn't a very good Florida State team, but I'm sure Mike Norvell is telling his team the same thing Dabo Swinney told his team before Notre Dame and North Carolina came to town. Is, we may be bad. We may have had some bad games, but we're still Florida State. So that's going to be the message on that side.
And that's Clemson, and we want to beat them.
Yep.
Yeah. That's the difference, that it's Clemson. It's not Wake Forest coming in. It's not North Carolina coming in. It's Clemson. Next to Miami, it's Florida State's, in Florida. Those are the three big rivals that Florida State has. Clemson's their third biggest rival. And Clemson is their biggest rival in terms of championships in the conference. Yep. It hasn't been Miami because Florida State has owned Miami. For the most
Clemson's
part.
Their only peer.
Yeah, Clemson's their only peer.
And Florida State is Clemson's only peer.
So, right. And that's a big deal. By the way, you know how I always say you got to pay attention to stats and understand what they're telling you. So when you look at Clemson's stats on defense and you see Clemson ranks next to last in total defense, you see Clemson is not – they're in the lower half in rushing defense. I think maybe next to last. They're in the lower half in total defense. They're in the lower half in defense points allowed. You got to look at that and understand why those numbers are that way.
Yep.
Clemson's first-team defense is not the reason they're there, right? They're not. The reason Clemson's numbers are there is because Clemson's been blowing people out, and they've been putting all the scrubby McScrubbers in.
They played a damn good Georgia football team that had a excellent second half. In
like they did against Alabama, right? Georgia had an excellent second half against Alabama too. So, my point being is Clemson's defense is better than those numbers show. So if you go and look at Clemson's defensive numbers, you're like, Clemson must not be very good on defense this year. That's a lie. Those numbers are lying to you because Clemson held Stanford to 65 total yards in the second half until the scrubby McScrubbers came in and Stanford got a garbage touchdown late in the game to make it look closer than it was.
Yeah, they also had 3 interceptions and 2 turnover on downs in that game.
3 turnovers on downs. Stanford was
3 turnover on downs.
Yeah.
So you have to take that into perspective too. The Clemson offense scores on a short field in a short amount of time. They were on the field for a long time.
They were on the Stanford killed to dominate. They dominated time possession in that game.
Yeah.
But my point being is this. So then you flip it over and you look at Florida State stats. Alex, here's Florida State stats. You ready? Points per game on offense, last in the ACC. Rushing offense, last in the ACC. Passing offense, 13th in the ACC. Total offense, last in the ACC. Total points allowed defense, 10th in the ACC. Rushing yards allowed defense, 14th in the ACC. Passing defense, not that bad, 7th in the ACC. They do a pretty good job there. But the reason they do a pretty good job there is because they're very bad at run defense. And then total yards, 13th in the ACC. Now, here's the difference in those stats. I gave you Clemson's bad, and I say, okay, we explained them. Well, now I'm going to explain why Florida State's is bad. Those are Florida State's first-team guys on offense and defense. They've been in close games or they've been getting blown out. So they didn't get blown out against Boston College, but Boston College was in control.
Florida State they didn't get blown out, but Boston College kicked their teeth in.
Yeah, but Florida State, my whole point being, Florida State played their first team offense and defense the whole game. Yep. Against Georgia Tech, they played their first team offense and defense the whole game. Against Memphis, they played their first team defense and offense the whole game. Against Cal, you get where I'm going here.
Yep.
Last week against SMU, you get where I'm going here. Florida State stats are who they are. That is who they are, Alex. They are not a very good football team. That's who they are. Clemson's stats on defense don't tell the truth because Clemson's playing a lot of guys and they're blowing teams out and the numbers are getting deflated. Florida State's numbers are not deflated. Go look at their scores of the games. If you watched any of Florida State's games, they're playing their first teamers the whole game. This is who they are. Clemson is who they are. Clemson's going to win this game going away. If Clemson comes in and plays Clemson football and takes care of the football and doesn't beat Clemson, Clemson wins this game going away. It could be every bit just like they did NC State. It could be every bit just like they did Stanford last week. Clemson's the better team. Clemson should come out of this game with the win. That's why I'm saying. So I'm going to go ahead and give the Tigers a win. I think Florida State is who they are at this point. That's who they are. They are a 1-4 football team.
And also in this game, I want Phil Maffa and Jay Haynes and heck Keith Adams Jr. I want those guys to have one heck of a day. Clemson needs to dominate the line of scrimmage in this game because they're that much better on both lines of scrimmage than Florida State, and I want to see it play out in real time.
And also, let's not forget what we saw the Florida State players doing on the field in Death Valley after they beat Clemson. It wasn't very nice gestures they were giving the Death Valley crowd. I think Dabo has probably shown that video footage. As a matter of fact, I know Dabo has. He's going to make sure his team knows, as Dabo went into his press conference and said today, that's still Florida State. We're going to go – we don't care if they're 1-4 or 5-0. That's Florida State. And Clemson's not going to go in there and say – I think Clemson's coming into this game, to fight. And whether the question is Florida State is too, but if Clemson comes into this game to fight, then Clemson's going to be okay.
Yep. I'm looking forward to it.
I am too, man. I think it's going to be good. I hope you guys are too. I know you all guys will be tuning in. By the way, the Clemson Insider will be there in person the whole game. So, go to the Clemson Insider pregame. You can go before the game, obviously, and all those things. We'll definitely have, all the coverage from start to finish, pregame, during the game, and postgame. You can go to the Clemson Insider and check out everything on the Clemson-Florida State game. So.
And we'd be remiss, too, want to mention, obviously Will just got power back on yesterday.
Yes.
My family, my dad's got power. I think my mom has power now. My grandma, not quite sure. We know a lot of people in North Carolina and South Carolina are dealing with some stuff this weekend. Georgia, Tennessee, the same. So we just want to let you guys know we're praying for you. Man, I know Will, he's there on the ground, do anything he can for you. Mm-hmm. Let us know what you need. We'll try to figure out how to get you connected.
Absolutely.
I know it's been a rough week for people.
Absolutely. I got my power back last night. I was worried, Alex, we weren't even going to be able to do this podcast.
I thought I was going to have to do, with half a voice, Jordan Leggett
or me be in the dark, just sitting here in the dark, talking. All you guys would just hear my voice. I didn't know what was happening because I had no power. But we were able to get power back last night. We were very fortunate, and I hope everybody else is starting to get their power back.
And special thank you to everybody that tuned in today.
Yeah.
I know some of you probably still don't have power, and you use your phone battery to listen to us, and that means a great deal to me and Will too.
True. I got one question. Alan wanted to ask us, what's the possibility of the wide receiver Murph coming out of Irmo? They announced today he's reclassifying in 2025. Great question. I'm not a recruiting guy. Neither is Alex.
JP.
Jason Priester is. And Alan, he's got the answer on our website. So go over to the website and check out the story that he put up earlier today on this very topic. So go give that a shot. Go give that a look if you wouldn't mind, so you can get the exact answer that you're looking for. So that's going to do it for us today. I want to thank Jordan Leggett for being on the show today. What a great guy he is, man. He was when he played for Clemson. He still is. Appreciate Jordan Leggett joining us. For Alex Dodd, I'm Will Vandervoort. We thank you for being with us. We'll talk to you next time on Bleav in Clemson Football.